Angela Rayner, you've come to Scotland today to promote your new deal for working people, which looks at reforming employment rules to correct the imbalance, in your view, where workers' rights have been neglected and diminished. It made me think that it's the spirit of Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party in that this is a radical policy area. It's the sort of radicalism he'd approve of, isn't it?
Well, I think the most important thing we need at the moment is this crucial change in the employment contract between employers and the workers, because far too often people are now in insecure work, which is damaging our economy. And when I spoke to many employers, they're actually up for this new deal for working people because it is transformative, but it'll help with staff retention, it will help with productivity, and it will help with the bottom line for business as well. So this is about a rebalance, as we've seen over the last 14 years, a deterioration in people's working conditions, like we saw with the P&O scandal. We want to readdress that balance.
And for people watching, what are the sort of 2 or 3 biggest proposals you're making in terms of improving their working rights?
Well, it's security at work more than anything. Fundamentally, it's rights from day one. It's ending fire and rehire, and it's giving people guaranteed hours and making sure that people have that level of security so they can plan for their life, because you can't get a mortgage, you can't plan what your budgeting's going to be if you haven't got secure work. So it's a fundamental pillar of how people can have better standards of living in the country.
Is it going to end 0 hours contracts?
We will ban and end 0 hour contracts, yes, because far too often people like to think, well, people want to work flexibly, and of course they still can. But what we can't have is a system where you can have a certain amount of hours that have continued for weeks on end, and then all of a sudden you've lost those hours and you've got no recourse for that. So it's about fairness, really, because employers saw the flexibility in the pandemic when people started working more flexibly, worked from home, changed their hours, and yet we've not seen that level of flexibility offered and afforded to workers at the same time. So we want security, and we want a flexible modern economy and working conditions for the 21st century.
And we were both in London at the Business Summit yesterday. You introduced the Shadow Chancellor, and then the Labour leader Keir Starmer gave a speech in the afternoon. And you spent the day pitching yourselves as a pro-business party. But on this policy area, Starmer was clear. He said, I want to be crystal clear about this. We are going to level up workers' rights in a way that has not been attempted for decades. And that might not please everyone in the room or the wider business community. Is it going to hurt business, this? Why did he issue that warning?
Because we know at the moment some employers don't do the right thing. Many do, by the way. Many of the proposals in the New Deal for Working People have actually come from employers too. They welcome our intervention because they recognise that a race to the bottom is not good for their bottom line either. But there are some employers, like the example I gave, like P&O, who don't do the right thing. And actually Keir's warning to them is that we're going to work with the employers that understand that good working conditions in the UK is good for productivity. And it's good for our mission one, because if we're going to grow the economy, help businesses do better in this country, the planning reforms and, the business rates, the security that Rachel was talking about, it's not a free cheque. We expect employers and businesses to pay their taxes and treat their workers fairly.
What assessment have you made of the cost of this pretty comprehensive package of proposals?
Well, there's no direct cost to the Exchequer, and actually there is offsetting some of the issues.
No, but to British business.
But to British businesses, most of the businesses that we've spoken to actually have implemented or do more than what the New Deal says that actually staff retention's better, levels of sickness are reduced, yes, productivity goes up. So the cost to business of not doing that actually is quite severe. So it's a false economy for those businesses who think that working on a business model that lowers people's wages, that keeps people in insecure work, is the best model. Absolutely wrong to believe that.
I totally get your points on the longer term benefits, but you must have made some sort of assessment of the upfront costs of this. For example, introducing full workers' rights from day one, sickness pay, parental leave, living wage, protection from unfair dismissal. Have you costed any of them yet?
Well, so for example, the protection against unfair dismissal and rights from day one, that all that is about saying to people you can't unfairly dismiss, and you end up in tribunals or you end up in circumstances which cost business more if they try and do it that way. You can still dismiss people. Have you made an assessment
of kind of how much?
There isn't. The point is there isn't a cost, and sickness, if people...
Well, there will be for legal fees, etc.
So those costs are already in place. If you're doing the wrong thing and you're unfairly dismissing someone, you'll end up with a cost in your business for doing that. So having clarity and giving people rights and making sure that employers understand that it's actually better to do things correctly in the first place because it won't cost you more in the future. Sickness, for example, people go off sick anyway if they're poorly. The problem and the challenge you've got is if people are trying to drag themselves into work, if they, we saw it in the pandemic, or you see it when people have got colds, etc., then all that does is make everybody else unwell, and actually those people might take longer to recover in the first place. So it's not like there's not a hidden cost for not doing the right thing. And if you do provide flexibility and security to your employers, sickness levels go down in an employer. So actually you save money by implementing in the new deal for working people.
But have you made an assessment of, as businesses transition to these new standards, kind of what the upfront cost will be for them, even if there is a longer term benefit? Because, business does have a right to know how much it might cost them.
Businesses will do better under Labour's plans, and the new deal for working people will make productivity higher, will reduce staff vacancies, staff time off sick, and it will provide better stability for them, and it will make sure that it gives them money in the future. But we also understand that there is transition. We said that we'll put the bill before Parliament in the first 100 days. We're committed to that. We're doing a huge amount of work with business now to bring them on board so they understand the distance. Some businesses have to travel more distance than others, but we're very clear that we will work with them. We will consult on things like the single category of worker, so that we make sure that we bring business with us, but we're unequivocal and we know the benefits that this produces, because the businesses that do it now are very clear that it does help their business and it does help productivity.
And you are consulting, but I guess then let's leave this now, but the point being that if you're going to bring the bill in 100 days and you say there are going to be transition costs, are you going to set that out closer to a general election about what the plan looks like and what the upfront cost might be to business before the general election?
I mean, some businesses, as I say, there will be absolutely no cost, and they can tell other businesses about the virtues. I hope that the businesses that are worried about the costs of the New Deal actually engage with us, because I can prove to them that not implementing the New Deal for working people actually costs their business money now. So some businesses will need more transition, and I hope that they will engage with us now, because it's not just about what the incoming Labour government will do. If you're a business operating in the UK today, if you're operating outside of what we're saying in the New Deal, then you're not getting the best for your business.
Okay, so there will be costs of the New Deal to business. In the long term, you think it will improve productivity and there will be greater benefits, and you'll set out those costs. You're not doing it now, you might do it before an election.
I don't believe there is a cost to business. Some businesses and their business model do not see the benefits of having secure employment for their workers at the moment. I think they're mistaken in that, and that I want them to engage with us, because actually they will see the cost of not implementing our New Deal is harming their business. This is good for business and it's good for workers. That's why the Labour Party have said we're pro-business and pro-worker. They're not binary. Do you know what I mean? They're not one side. Oh, well, you either pro-worker or pro-business.
Of what, acknowledging that there will be transition costs as businesses move to this.
It's not so much transition costs. It's transition to understand the business model that will actually grow your business and make it more productive.
But there will be upfront, because they might have more legal fees, they might have to take on more, sick pay, etc., etc. There will be upfront costs for business. Well, it doesn't mean in the long term it's not a good idea.
Sure. So the statutory sick pay, we'll be making sure that people have access to that. So we'll be ending the lower income threshold, and we'll be making sure that people can get sick pay without this 4-day period. That's not a cost. Actually, by making sure that people have those rights means that actually they'll get less sick, they'll recover quicker, and they're not spreading it across the workplace so that other people then are off sick. I've seen this happen in the workplace. days when I was a trade union rep in home care. And actually, when we had flexibility on our contracts, our sickness levels was reduced. And when people were able to take time off to rest, they were back in the workplace quicker. So it's actually less cost to the employer. That's the point I'm making, is that actually we can see through the evidence that this will save employers money in the long run.
Let's go on to the single worker status, because it's a really important issue, this. You know, just to explain to the viewers, there's three types of people working: genuinely self-employed, employed, they may work for an established company and enjoy valuable employment rights, and finally workers. And workers typically, don't they, work in the gig economy, dropping off takeaways, bringing parcels to your door. You say you want to change that and put the employees and workers on the same status. And you said you wanted to do it in the Green Paper from day one. Obviously, you'll have to put legislation through. But do you think, Angela Rayner, that the Labour government can do that in the first 100 days, that you can put them on the same status through legislation?
Well, there's already a lot of work that's going on. There's the unions at the moment with some of our big employers in the gig economy, like GMB and Uber and others, are already working on this issue, and there's already been case law that's been produced as part of that. We want to end bogus self-employment. We recognise self-employment is part of a modern day economy, but we also recognise that workers should be treated as workers and should have the benefits of being employed and being a worker. So we are working through that, and we're doing lots of that work now in preparation for the bill that will be laid before Parliament in the first 100 days. We will consult widely on it and make sure we don't damage the economy or damage business or even people's flexibility that they enjoy, but we have to end this bogus self-employment that has been dripping into our economy through the back door.
Because it was reported that it had shifted from a pledge to an ambition, and there was some doubts about whether or not you will change the status of workers, you know, even if not in the first 100 days, but by the end of the Parliament. So can we just sort of kill that now and just confirm that you will
We will lay the legislation within the first 100 days, which is our New Deal, which some of it is about primary legislation, some of it is secondary, some of it doesn't even need legislation. But this issue around single category of worker is already on the horizon, and employers with trade unions in the gig economy are already leading the way on it. So we're already in that engagement process to make sure that what we bring in and implement actually works for the workers and the employers.
So just to be clear, so if you're in one of those workers' jobs, so you know, delivering parcels or food, etc., they might watch this wanting reassurance. Can you tell them that this is a sort of when, not if, that they will get afforded the same rights under a Labour government?
We will bring in the single status of worker. We will end this bogus self-employment. That is our mission as part of the New Deal. That's what we're setting out, and we will do that in conjunction and consultation through the process to ensure that we actually mean what we say and say what we mean. Because sometimes if you act in haste, you can create more chaos, and we're not going to do that. So we're already in the engagement on that. Employers understand what we want to achieve, the workers understand what we're trying to achieve, and we're already working, and there's already case law, and these issues are already being tackled in the economy.
But it might take a bit more time.
Well, the bill will be laid within the first 100 days, which is our commitment.
All right, so
but of course, the transition and how we get that through is you know, you can't say instantly within 100 days it's going to happen like this.
You might give some transition period for business, but by the end of a Labour government, after 5 years, this will be fixed.
We are going to have it in our bill, and we're going to take this issue forward in that Parliament. We're very clear on that. We will end bogus self-employment.
Okay. And I want to come on now to, because we're in Scotland, there's a very live issue up here, which is, apart from your new employment deal, Rachel Reeves saying she won't restore bankers' bonus cap lifted by the Liz Truss government. Anna Sawa, Labour's leader here in Scotland, said that decision by the Shadow Chancellor is wrong. Who do you agree with, Rachel or Anas?
Well, Rachel's been clear that in order for our mission one, which is to grow the economy, be the fastest growing economy in the G7, stability is key. We've been talking to business leaders here in Scotland and across UK. Stability is key. We've had chaos and instability, and therefore Rachel said at the time this was about the financial crisis, the cap was introduced, and there's been so many more regulations that have been implemented since then. It wouldn't have been our priority, what the government have done, but it's not a priority for us to then start creating more instability.
Okay. So
our priority is to grow the economy and the investment that we need in order then
but you
to
acknowledge
pay
that
for
it's
our public
politically
services.
difficult, and particularly in Scotland, this is a politically difficult sell.
But it's about our priorities to create the stability that we need in our economy so that we can grow the economy, which is our priority, so we can pay for our public services. That has to be our key number one drive. We've seen countless prime ministers, countless chancellors of the Exchequer chopping and chasing chaos, which has damaged our economy to the point where when we set out our proposals a couple of years ago, we've had a disastrous Liz Truss breaking of the economy through her disastrous mini-budget. We've had the situation with the pandemic. Lots have changed, but we're very committed to our number one mission, which is to grow the economy and get that investment. And everybody who we speak to says stability has to be
the
key
SNP,
to that.
though, are making hay about this in Scotland. They are attacking Labour for this decision to not reverse lifting bankers' bonus caps. And they're also having a go at you today about the callous two-child cap on child benefit. I mean, these Labour policies, which in a way are to appeal to an English base, which is very much centre-ground or centre-right voters, is hurting you in Scotland. Is it a risk?
Whether in Scotland or whether in England or any parts of the UK, if we can't bring stability to our economy and that growth and investment we need, then that damages our investment in public services. We've seen the cost of living crisis. We've got to fix energy bills. So our Great British Energy is part of that. We've got to fix people's living standards. That's why the New Deal for Working People will do that. We've got to fix our public services. That's why we've got to grow the economy and bring the stability we need. So whether that's in Scotland or whether that's in England, you can't have unfunded commitments, because we saw what Liz Truss did with that. It crashed our economy. We have got to have economic security in order to grow the economy and put money back into our public services and into people's pockets. That is our number one driving mission, and we won't apologise for that.
You've changed, Angela Rayner, though, because I mean, you were a fierce critic of abandoning the cap. In the past, you said the hypocrisy of removing restrictions for bankers in the public sector face a prolonged period of below inflation pay rises is clear. It's an indication of where this government's priorities lie. And the reason I put that to you is it's like you are changing your positions on quite a lot of things. Is this because you know that you need to be in the centre ground to win?
No, we need to have a strong economy and stability in this country to pay for things like our public services, which I am absolutely key. I don't like the two-child tax limit. I don't like what the Tories have done in the last 14 years and how they've damaged working people's lives. That's why the New Deal is crucial. That's why we need to grow our economy so we can put more money into public services. But the bottom line, which I absolutely agree with Rachel on, is that if we cannot make sure that we have that fiscal stability and that reassurance for the markets, we will not get all those other things that Labour want to achieve, and we're not doing anyone in Scotland or England any favours by having. It
might help the SNP though. Scotland's really crucial to Labour in this election. Some of these policies might help the SNP. They might think we're better off voting SNP than voting Labour if we don't like these policies.
The thing is, and I think the Scottish people understand this, is that having that stability in our economy will ensure, and the growth plan that we have will ensure we can pay for our public services. Just shouting from a megaphone is not changing anything. We've had 14 years of the Conservatives in power and people's living standards have reduced. We've had this managed decline and this chaos. Only a Labour government with that stability and purpose of mission will be able to achieve what our values are, which are the values of the Scottish people, and I think the British people, is that we've got to have good public services. We've got to make sure that people aren't living in poverty, and we've got to make sure that work pays so that people can have a decent standard of living. Do you feel like
you used to be a politician that did shout with a megaphone? You did shout with a megaphone.
I mean, I've had plenty of megaphones in the past,
but now you are towing the party line, be it bankers' bonuses, which you clearly don't like.
It's not
two-child cap, you don't like that.
It's not towing the party line. It's about making sure that we can get into government, secure our economy, grow the economy, pay for the public services and change working people's lives. That's my mission. That's what I want to achieve. And that's about being responsible so that we can deliver for people. Being in opposition, and I've been in opposition ever since I've been elected as an MP, has not improved working people's lives. I've seen a deterioration while the Tories are in power. We have got to see the end of the Tory rule and have a stable government that is going to grow the economy to pay for our services that we need so desperately and to stop this managed decline. And I think the people of Scotland get that.
Okay, final question. You've just talked about people's working lives. I want to talk to you quickly about your working life and MP's working lives, because footage emerged last week of you being confronted by protesters about Gaza inside a Labour Party meeting. I watched it. They got really close to you. You had to step in to block them from getting to a colleague. It was really uncomfortable. We've seen an MP murdered. We've seen MPs murdered, and death threats are almost commonplace. Mike Freer this week is standing down as an MP because of this. Do you worry about your own safety? Does it make you think twice?
I mean, I'm really sad that Mike is standing down, but I can totally understand and appreciate the drip feed of how it is. You can't take one incident in isolation. So, for example, that incident, people said, why didn't you just speak to the person? I would have spoke to the person. I'll speak to them one-to-one. I'll have a conversation. But when you get the levels of abuse and threats that MPs get now, when someone comes at you, you don't know. You honestly don't know. When someone's shouting and they come over at you, you don't know what's coming. I didn't know what's coming at me, and it did affect me, and it has affected me since that incident. And I'm not blaming that individual, because they don't know the context of my inbox. They don't get the context of how MPs have to, tolerate that levels of abuse. Now, of course, you can disagree with members of Parliament. You could disagree with their position, and you can protest about people's position. But I think a lot of the time people don't. Often the people who have threatened me, when they've been contacted by the police, said, oh, I didn't realise. They sent an email that maybe have a death threat in it, and they think, oh, I was just angry and I didn't realise. They don't understand that if you're getting hundreds of abuse, if you're getting constant threats, and then someone comes at you looking aggressive, then that can be really intimidating and scary for that MP.
Were you scared?
I'm not blaming those individuals. I understand that people are upset, but often they don't realise, yes, I was scared, and my family are scared for me. And that's why Mike has took the decision he's taken. I'm not blaming individuals, but that level of discourse has, when two of our MPs that were colleagues, I knew both Joe, I knew David, they were colleagues of mine, were murdered in their constituency. That does have an impact when you're constantly getting that levels of abuse and threat.
So in that moment in the room, what's going through your mind, that this person could actually physically attack you, could hurt you?
You freeze. The footage, people have seen it, like, why did everyone just sit there? People were frightened. They don't know what's going to happen, and I understand. I'm not suggesting that those individuals were trying to threaten us. I understand that that's not, because often when the police have spoke to people who have abused me or sent me threats, they're very apologetic. But I think what people need to understand, that you can disagree with a member of Parliament, whichever political party they are, but that constant threats and abuse, and the fact that we've had two of our colleagues murdered in the last couple of years, it does weigh on our minds. And therefore, if you do come at us shouting, we are going to be quite frightened by it.
Have you had to change your behaviour around it, Angie? Or
absolutely, yeah. I have changed my behaviour. Yeah, I don't go out. I don't have a social life. People want to see me. They come to my house. It does change what you do. It has had an impact on my day-to-day life.
Do you ever think about packing it in because of it, or not, ever?
I don't think about packing it in, because I think that's our democracy. And the Joe Cox Foundation did a study which said that one of the biggest threats to our democracy at the moment is the abuse that MPs are receiving at the moment. And I think we have to take heed of that. Like I say, I think the right to protest, the right to disagree and robustly debate is really important in this country. I like to be robustly debating with colleagues in Parliament as well. But when it tips over to threats where you have members of parliament, and Mike's not the first. We had members of parliament that have stepped down because of abuse they suffered. We've had an SNP member, the deputy leader of the SNP, who says they're not going to stand again because of the levels of abuse and threats that they've received. I think that's a serious threat to our democracy, and we have to take heed of that. And by the way, I think majority of people in this country would never send abuse and threats to anybody. It's a minority that overstep the line, and I don't even think they purposely do it. And I think people need to reflect on that.
And just finally, just on that, you've just reminded me, I mean, you got into hot water a few years ago for saying something unpleasant about the Tories, about Tory scum. Now, when you look back on that, and given how things have evolved, and you're talking about this kind of aggression within politics and it being a threat to democracy, actually, this abuse, do you look back on that now and say, like, Angela Rayner now would now not do that or say that because of how things have evolved?
I look back on it at the time, and when I saw that Tory MPs, their officers, were being graffitied, I came out very strongly and apologised and said I did not incite a level of abuse. I wanted people to vote them out.
Yes.
I want people to vote them out. That's democracy. What I didn't want to do is people to individually target MPs with levels of abuse or threats, and I certainly didn't want that to be done in any sort of incitement from myself. And I reflected on that, and I think we all have to reflect on our own behaviours as we go on and go forth, because actually we have got more in common. You know, to take Jo Cox's foundation that was set up as her legacy after she was murdered, we have got more in common. We can robustly debate, we can disagree, that is part of a thriving democracy, but the levels of abuse and threats have to stop.
I'm worried about the election in that sense. I think it's going to be dirty, and I think there's going to be a lot of mudslinging on both sides.
I hope the British public reject any extreme language and abuse and threats, because that's not how we conduct ourselves, and most people are not like that. I have conversations with, you know, Conservative voters all the time that says, Ange, we like the way you do things, we like you, but I'll never vote for your policies, and that's great. And we can have a laugh. I can have a laugh with people who don't have my political views, and that's okay. We should be able to do that. And I think we've got to reject those on the extreme that try and create these divisions and attacks. We can go into a general election, hopefully, debate those policies and decide who we think will be the best government going forward without hurling abuse and threats at each other.
Is it going to be you? Do you think you're going to win?
I hope so. I'm going to be going around the UK, putting our New Deal to people, showing that we need change in this country, and hopefully people will elect us on a positive platform for change as opposed to division and threats.
Okay, Angela Rayner, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.